After being hit by a meteorite, Susan transforms into a super-powered giant and is recruited into the team of monsters responsible for defending the Earth from an alien invasion. Today we'll be recapping the story of the 2009 movie, Monsters vs. Aliens. Somewhere in the galaxy, a rocky planet collapses and explodes into millions of pieces, releasing a large chunk of quantonium-energized rock that travels through space towards Earth. In California, a woman named Susan finishes the preparations for her wedding ceremony and goes to the church where she talks to all the guests. Before the wedding, the woman goes outside where she meets her fiancé Derek, who tells her they'll have to cancel their honeymoon in Paris to move to Fresno County, where he'll be working as the new anchor for Channel 23. Even though she's sad about not going to France, Susan supports her fiancé and congratulates him on his promotion, asking him to go down the aisle and wait while she finishes getting ready. But as soon as Derek enters the church, the woman hears a mysterious bang coming from the sky and notices a gigantic meteorite coming towards her. Susan is hit and luckily barely suffers any scratches, allowing her to proceed with the ceremony as normal. However, while she is taking her vows, Derek notices that the bride's skin is fluorescent and quite greenish. At that moment, her hair begins to turn white and her body grows until she no longer fits inside the church, drawing the attention of the American army, who arrive in a matter of seconds. Attempting to immobilize her, the soldiers grab Susan's arm and fire a giant tranquilizer dart that hits her in the leg, but she doesn't let up and takes revenge by throwing the syringe at one of the soldiers' feet. From that moment on, she starts feeling sleepy until she passes out in the open, waking up inside a futuristic prison a few hours later. Confused, the woman gets out of bed and walks to a large room with a table in the center, but while exploring the place, she hears voices behind one of the doors and approaches to try to talk, being completely ignored. Just then, a strange tube comes out of the ceiling and leaves an extremely disgusting slime on the table, which attracts Dr. Cockroach, a scientist who was experimenting with insects and ended up turning into a humanoid mutant. Startled by his appearance, Susan picks up a spoon and begins to strike him until she smashes the deformed cockroach against the table. Surprised by the existence of such a thing, the woman starts walking backwards and ends up stumbling upon Bob, a brainless, one-eyed gelatin that was created through a genetically modified tomato. While she's talking to the two, Missing Link appears in her hair and introduces himself as a rather womanizing half-man half-fish monster who has spent the last 20,000 years frozen. After introducing themselves, the trio asks Susan's monster name and realize she doesn't have one, but before they can give her a nickname, lunchtime arrives and they each get a different meal, except for Susan, who starts walking backwards still until she hits her back on the Insectosaurus, a small larva that was hit by a nuclear bomb and is now over 120 meters tall. While Missing Link soothes Bug with a caress on her belly, Susan runs to the corner and starts banging on the wall for help, until suddenly, General Warren comes out of one of the doors and orders the monsters back to their cells. Happy to finally see a human, Susan asks to get out of there and the general begins to present the facilities, saying that this is the place that the American government founded in the 50s to hide the monsters, and now that she has become giant, she is condemned to stay in this place for the rest of her life, without any contact with the outside world. After touring the place, General Warren takes the woman back to her cell and tells her they've redecorated the place with a kitten poster to calm her down, and changed her name to Jinormica. Meanwhile, in space, an alien named Galaxar awakens from his slumber and discovers that the meteorite containing the quantonium has crashed to Earth. Wanting every atom of the substance, the alien version of the squid sends a robot probe to extract the quantonium and orders it to destroy anyone who tries to interfere with its goal. On Earth, a couple spots a giant meteorite falling in the middle of the woods and alerts the authorities, causing the president to summon the entire American army and go personally to establish contact with the alien, but the probe completely ignores it and tries to crush it, initiating an army reaction. Even with all the American artillery, the probe does not suffer any scratches because it has a force field protecting its bodywork, which forces the army to retreat. After the evacuation, the American High Summit meets and the advisors begin to debate the best way to deal with ET, but as no one gives an efficient solution, General Warren invades the meeting and suggests using the monsters to fight for them. To convince them that it's a good idea, the general introduces each of the monsters and explains how they got their powers, saying that this is the ideal team to fight the aliens. Unsuspecting of what is happening outside, Bob and Missing Link play cards while Dr. Cockroach conducts some experiments on Susan, trying to get her back to normal. After the failed test, a general arrives on the scene and reveals that they will be going on a special mission, and that they will win their long-awaited freedom if they can defeat the alien robot. In San Francisco, the military manages to locate the alien probe and drops the monsters near it, leaving everyone frightened by the colossal size of the enemy. Panicked, Susan begins to hyperventilate and Dr. Cockroach suggests she hide in the city while they try to deal with the enemy robot, but because of the size difference, they can only watch as the probe crushes Bob and begins walking towards the center. In the city, Susan is located by the robot that, instead of attacking her, begins to scan her body, identifying the quantum inside her and finally entering hunting mode. Now that it knows who to attack, the probe begins to chase Jinormika, who leaps over buildings like she's Spider-Woman, but realizing she won't get very far that way, she decides to use two convertibles, using them to gain speed while going down a hill. At the same time, Missing Link swims through the sewers and Dr. Cockroach rides a jet streetcar, but as he tries to tell them his plan, Bob breaks free from the rig's feet and flies straight towards them, blinding his colleagues, who end up falling into San Francisco Bay. A few meters away, Susan skates out of control and ends up on the Golden Gate Bridge, causing an accident with a truck that brings traffic to a standstill. As she tries to clear the track, the probe approaches from the sea to capture it and ends up getting its claws caught in the bridge cables, causing the asphalt to twist and of cars to fall into the crusher inside its mouth. At that moment, the military finally arrives with the bug that hijacks the bridge and splashes several layers of silk into the enemy's eyes, blocking his vision. Almost at the same time, Missing Link and the others arrive on the bridge and end up distracting Susan, who is caught in the alien robot's clutches, but thanks to her new powers, she manages to resist and open the android's hand through sheer brute force. While wrangling with Jinormika, the rig ends up destroying part of the asphalt that begins to crack, causing the cars to slide towards the water, but Susan manages to keep everyone safe by using her leg as a barrier and holding the vehicles. Taking advantage of the robot being busy, Dr. Cockroach climbs through Jinormika's body and into the alien's mouth, arriving at its central system where several wires coordinate its functions. To help his friend, the radioactive cockroach takes two cables and joins the copper parts, but ends up causing a short that turns on the scanner in the robot's eyes, emitting a large amount of light that leaves the Insectosaurus totally paralyzed. As he no longer responds, Susan decides to prioritize the lives of civilians and asks Bob to remove the retaining walls, freeing cars to turn around and go over the bridge. With the people safe, Jinormika makes one last effort and begins to pull on the steel cable in the probe's hands, causing it to unbalance and fall over the bridge. Because of the colossal weight, the entire structure of the Golden Gate begins to sag and one of the main beams breaks in half, falling on the robot that has its body split in half, shutting it down almost instantly. On the other side of the universe, Galaxar sees that his plan has failed and decides to come personally to Earth, plotting a direct route to our galaxy to recover the quantum. After the battle, the monsters are taken to Jinormika's house, who decides to introduce the new friends to her family, but as they have not socialized with any human for decades, they are not at all pleasant and Bob almost devours Susan's mother. After things settle down, she finally realizes that Derek didn't come to the celebration and decides to go after him, leaving her friends with the rest of the family. But that was a bad decision, for Dr. Cockroach almost blows up the humans, who flee in despair. From the station, Derek is doing his last broadcast on channel 172 when